So I go by Flippy and I'm living in Austria. When arriving to Innsbruck, when arriving to the city where I did my studies, I was interested in somehow connecting with the Jewish community. That was also before I was politicized. So the only community that existed was this, it's called IKG, Israeli Community Center in Austria for Jewish people. And basically, I was joining for some holidays just as a way to connect with the community. It was mostly old people, mostly that had lived there for a while. So people in retirement age. And sometimes it was nice. And ever since the 7th of October, it just became unbearable. We realized how much people were siding with genocide. And so it became very difficult to even be connected. So my joining of events organized by this community was became more a question of politics. So I wanted to understand how these events were going, how they were trying to shift the discourse and the different academics that were speaking in the city and government officials. I was added to a newsletter by this community where anytime an event was happening, it was shared with me, including, free the hostages. They were having a walk every month, and also like events that would happen every now and then. And one of these events in March was the visit of the Israeli ambassador to Austria, David Roet, at the Jewish Community Center. So of course, when I saw this, I thought, whoa, that's an interesting event that it would be great to attend, to try to see what kind of things he is saying, right? At that time, not really thinking about anything more than that, but just as a potential to join an event like that and see how a politician who's very closely tied with the government, the Israeli ambassador to Austria, speaking for about an hour uninterrupted within a few questions and basically going on a row of different stories of his family as well as his role as an ambassador as well as his role in coming now to the city and very like diplomatic things and then he started to talk about things related to Gaza, right? And I think that's when I realized like wow, this is insane. When you realize what he is actually saying, that this is a human, with emotions, that this is somebody who, grows up, loving other humans and who has you think, has a soul, has a heart, has empathy, realize the things he is saying are completely dystopic and, cruel. Being said, especially with everyone else just, nodding and watching and saying nothing. So that was really scary. About a month after that happened, right after the video was leaked and also, went extremely viral, I got a phone call. I was out of the country, basically saying, "Hey, this is special anti-terror police. We're at your door. If you are around, you are free to join us so that you can watch us basically raiding your house as a witness. And otherwise, we're still going to go ahead with it." And they said that, yeah, it's relating to a video. We think what we're talking about anyways, and you have no choice. We're going to go through with this anyways. So this was an extremely scary moment. I was trying to call people in the area to try to see if they could go there, maybe try to speak with them or somehow stop them from going in. But, nothing could be done. And they went, as I heard, they went inside, knew, I guess, where my room was because things of mine were there, and then started basically to go through everything and take anything that they thought was of interest. So anything that had data on it, including notebooks, an old phone, my work computer, and then basically left and called me and were like, yeah, this has gone through now. We have all of your things. If you want them back, you need to go to the police station by yourself and basically sign a sheet that, how do you say, confirms that this was at your house, that we now have your things. Yeah. I did not know also the severity of the case. I think still by no means justifies a house raid. So I think that shows also the political character of such an action, right? To like within a few days, weeks, have the authority to go into someone's private space and basically, devastate the place, taking away things, breaking things on the way. Seems definitely out of line, especially when there has not been any prior conviction. So I had to go back to make sure I could get my things again. So the following day, I went to the police station and then I stayed for a few months until about September. So actually almost half a year. I stayed, not having like a fixed place, as I was, always under this like fear that this might happen again, that they're still looking out for other devices that you still have on you. So it was a rough couple of months, but I was still in Austria, and then in September I left. June, July, they called me in to the police station, a few months after all of this happened for questioning. This was the anti-terror unit, and this was something that I had to go to. So I didn't have a choice. I went there with a lawyer. They were going to question me. I knew I wasn't going to say anything. So it was quite a short meeting. But as soon as I entered, they asked me for my phone. So luckily I didn't have it on me. But as soon as I entered the police station, with a closed door behind me that I couldn't get out of, they asked me for my phone. So at that moment would have taken it. So yeah, it was clear that they were still after those devices, and then of course also asked me if I wanted to give them the passkey to my computer and to my other devices that they had, and just try to question me. But yeah, that was that. Negative thoughts I had about the police before becoming an activist. I think I was still thinking, hey, at least we need police that counters terrorism, right? That is always going to be a good thing because terrorism is bad. And so now, I think in the last year and two, I've seen this take a whole nother shape where, especially on the left, right, especially on activists, on organizations that are against the state, that are against, repression, there is this like incessant need to picture them, to paint them as terror organizations. And so I think with that, I was already a bit primed to saying, okay, I'm, potentially a target of this kind of unit, but never would I have thought that they go so easily into someone's house, related to something that is in reality not a serious offense. There is a definitely mounting repression on a number of fronts, right? Whether that is like direct repression on the streets that we're seeing with activists in Berlin and also in Vienna, as well as, academic repression, which I've experienced through friends that have hosted events and that are still today feeling the consequences from different staff, from different senior staff that are, inviting them to events in order to question them on their intentions, speaking about Palestine. So it's taking on so many different fronts that I'm not, surprised that, an event like that would also trigger great repression. Sure. So this was just a few weeks prior. During the winter holidays, there was a special airplane from Tel Aviv to Innsbruck. An idea was to go to the airport and basically welcome the people arriving with a sign that said, "From one Jew to another, stop the genocide." Right, just as they were arriving in the country before they go on their skiing holiday or whatever. And that was the idea, right? Just to stand there with a sign, as there are many other people standing with a sign. And then as I was walking along the airport, undercover agent saw me with a sign and then alerted the police. The police went on surround me. I was sitting on my sign, and basically I think it was about 12 police that were all like surrounding me in a semicircle, actually forming two rows around me with heavy machine guns, basically telling me to show them the sign. I wouldn't show them the sign, so then they took it from under me and then asked, since it was written in Hebrew, asked the agent to translate it for them. And then he said, yeah, this says, from one Jew to another, stop the genocide. It's badly written. And then basically the police, questioned me on my motive, asked the director of the airport, basically kicked me out. And in that whole process, the agents were taking pictures of me, were taking pictures of my details that I had to give to the police. And the police basically was not intervening in any of this, right? Normally this is private information, it's a private space. And somehow they were just let to take all of these details as they had found the person that they were looking for somehow. In general, it's about Gaza, right? It's about a genocide that is still going on. And right now, people are suffering from Polar Storm Byron. Has hit Gaza at extreme force, and people are in tents, some underwater, right? I think 90% of the tents are unfit for human living. So, of course, the main focus on making sure we are there for the people in Gaza, whether that is a donation, whether that is, sharing it on your accounts, whether that is, speaking out in public to your politicians, putting pressure on companies who are still reporting the, Zionist military and, oppression, apartheid regime, whether that is in the West Bank or in Gaza. And really, yeah, making sure that you can put your attention there, especially in these cold months coming up. Outside of that, of course, there is a community of activists in the imperial core, whether that's in Europe or whether that's in the US, who are fighting against all of these interests that are still supporting and without which entity could not function. I think it's important to remember that, the same, right? On a very human basis, right? We are all the same. There is no difference of race, of ethnicity, of religion in terms of who we are, right? We are all emotional beings who have a deep connection towards each other and towards nature, right? And of course there is also, specific identities, specific ethnicities that relate to political issues, but just to be careful also with identity politics, right? To say like, me as a Jewish person, I'm doing this. Of course, it can add some weight to your actions, but in the end, the cause is against oppression, which is mainly coming from a capitalist elite that has an interest in resources, that has an interest in land and, controlling borders, and that we are all fighting against this, right? And, just to remember that there are, differences that then spring up and then groups that split up when we should, all be fighting on the same line. So I think that's important to remember. And I think the role of Jewish activists, it's also to show that the issue is not about anti-Semitism, but it's about fighting Zionism, which, to be honest, on my perspective, has anti-Semitic roots, right? If you look at the people who were supporting Zionism from the start, there was some very far-right German people who saw it as a solution, right, to the Jewish problem in Europe. So also to remember that, right, and to say like, actually, our community is wherever we are, right? There is not one land, and you have no right to tell us where we should go, where we should live. We live in, all over the world, and whether you are practicing your religion or whether you are, just following it, or that's your background, just know that, there are people who try to speak for you, who try to, say they are doing things in protection of you, and that it's also your responsibility to say, this is not happening in my name, and my home is right where I am. I can't explain the admiration I have for the resistance of the Palestinian people, the resilience of the Palestinian people, through everything you have gone through, all the attempts to crush your spirit, to crush your community. You have kept your community, you have kept your belief, you have kept your, solidarity among each other. And everything we do here, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in the US, it's to try to stop, your oppression, the violence against you. And we learn from you, right? We want to include Palestinian voices in our struggle because you have gone through the systems we are fighting for so much longer. And we hope that you won't have to fight and you can start to rebuild and to live in peace as soon as possible.